They hid this secret from you. That's why you're still broke, and it's not a conspiracy in the way you might think. There are no cloaked figures in smoky boardrooms orchestrating your mediocrity. It's far more insidious than that. The truth is embedded in the systems you trust, the institutions you rely on, and the culture you've absorbed without resistance. It's embedded in how you think, in how you live, in how you wake up every morning and go to sleep every night. And unless you confront it with brutal honesty, you will never escape it. Let's begin with the first layer of this deception. Wealth is not primarily about money. It's not about numbers in a bank account, or possessions stacked in garages, or lifestyle optics on social media. No, wealth begins as a transformation within the psyche. If you do not change who you are at your core, no amount of external gain will ever stick. It will dissolve, it will vanish, it will burn out because you were not constructed to hold it. That's the real reason most people stay broke. Not because they don't work hard. Many work hard, sometimes too hard, but they don't work correctly. They haven't reconstructed themselves into people capable of holding prosperity. They believe that wealth is something you chase, as if it were prey in the forest. But wealth is something you attract by who you become, and who you become is a byproduct of the structure. Yes, structure, of your internal world. You are not broke because of the economy. You are not broke because of your parents. You are not broke because your boss doesn't see your worth. You are broke, fundamentally, because your values, habits, beliefs, and internal narratives are misaligned with wealth itself. Wealth is order. Poverty is chaos, and most live in chaos and call it normal. You can observe this in simple patterns. A man receives a sudden windfall, and within months it's gone. Why? Because psychologically he wasn't wealthy. He didn't know how to contain it. He didn't respect it. He didn't understand the rules it obeys. The money didn't change him. It exposed him. He simply returned to his internal baseline. This is the secret you were never taught, that your external world reflects your internal hierarchy of value. And if your internal world is a mess, full of envy, resentment, fear, excuses, and unstructured living, then no financial opportunity will save you. You will sabotage yourself. You'll leak money through habits, through laziness, through mindless consumption, through distractions you've convinced yourself are harmless. Now let's go deeper, because the second secret is even more disturbing. Your belief systems were not chosen by you. They were handed to you, engineered, conditioned into you by a society that benefits from your compliance. From a young age, you were taught things that were not only untrue but deeply damaging. You were told to blend in, to be realistic, to play it safe, to get in line, to obey authority, to not dream too big. You were taught to see ambition as arrogance. You were taught that wanting more made you greedy, that success must come with compromise, dishonesty, or luck. So you stopped trying, or you tried within the narrow limits they gave you. You stayed in systems that drained you, schools that never taught you how to think critically, only how to repeat, jobs that demanded submission instead of creativity, social circles that mocked aspiration because it reminded them of their own cowardice. You internalized all of this without challenge. You absorbed it, and now you call it your personality. This is why you're broke. Not just financially, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally. You were programmed to believe that striving for more is a sin, that financial ambition is a threat to morality, that dreaming of freedom, autonomy, and abundance makes you some sort of villain. But it doesn't. It makes you awake. It makes you responsible, and that's precisely what they didn't want you to become. Because if you become responsible for your own destiny, truly responsible, then you stop depending on them. You stop voting like a pawn. You stop buying distractions to soothe your anxiety. You stop blaming the system and start building something outside it, and that terrifies the machine, because the moment you realize that you are capable of radical change, the game ends for them. Your fear no longer feeds their control, so they kept you busy with meaningless work, busy with entertainment, busy with gossip, busy with outrage, and in that busyness you lost yourself. You forgot how to question. You forgot how to dream. You forgot how to be dangerous in the best possible sense, dangerous to the narratives that keep people small. You became harmless, passive, predictable. Understand this clearly. They taught you how to cope with poverty, not how to escape it. They gave you slogans, not strategies. They gave you awareness, but never responsibility. They said things like money isn't everything, while quietly building empires for themselves. They told you to be content, while they structured their lives for domination. They handed you a script and told you that coloring inside the lines was virtue. But what they were really doing was domesticating you. And every time you tried to break out, every time you said, "Maybe I can be more," the programming kicked in. That voice in your head, which you think is your conscience, whispered, "Who do you think you are? Stay in your lane, don't risk it. What if you fail? What will people think?" That voice isn't your wisdom. It's your conditioning. It's the echo of 1,000 cowardly messages that were planted in you before you were old enough to defend yourself. And now, even as an adult, you obey it. You self-sabotage in subtle ways. You procrastinate. You consume instead of create. You drown yourself in comforts to avoid discomfort, even though discomfort is the only path to transformation. You say yes to things that drain you. You say no to the things that could elevate you. And you tell yourself that it's just life. But it's not just life, it's programming. And if you don't confront it head on, it will run your story until the day you die. They didn't want you to know that wealth is a skill, that success is a formula, that freedom is earned, that building a new reality requires tearing apart the old one inside your own mind, that the way you speak, think, plan, act, and relate to the world all determine your outcome. They didn't want you to know that discipline matters more than talent, that structure beats emotion, that sacrifice now builds sovereignty later. They didn't want you to know because the second you know, you begin to move differently. You start waking up with fire, you stop settling, you begin to see life as it is, not as the story you were sold. They hid it behind school systems that reward memorization over mastery, behind cultures that celebrate mediocrity and mock excellence, behind media that glorifies dysfunction and suppresses greatness, behind narratives that paint victims as heroes and heroes as villains. They turned you against yourself. They convinced you that wanting more was shameful, when in reality it was the most human thing about you. The divine urge to grow, to expand, to overcome, to build, to dominate your environment rather than be dominated by it. They called it arrogance, when in fact it was your birthright. But they couldn't let you know that, because a man or woman who embraces their potential becomes unstoppable. There's a lie you've swallowed without even chewing, the belief that comfort is the goal, that comfort is success, that once you're comfortable, you've made it. But what they never told you, what they deliberately concealed, is that comfort is the most sophisticated poverty trap ever constructed. It lulls you, it seduces you, it whispers to you in moments of weakness, and offers you just enough relief to keep you stuck. It doesn't demand your soul all at once. It takes it in increments, and you give it freely because comfort feels good in the short term. But what it steals is your future. You're not broke because you're not smart enough. You're broke because you're too comfortable being broke, too comfortable with mediocrity, too comfortable with excuses. You've adapted to your own dysfunction and called it normal. You've trained yourself to endure the unacceptable and named it patience. You've tolerated low standards and wrapped them in language that sounds noble. But at the core, you've chosen ease over excellence, and understand this. Ease is the enemy of greatness. Nothing extraordinary is built in a comfortable state. You think wealth comes from inspiration, from passion, from waiting until you feel ready. No, it comes from grit, from repetition, from doing what's necessary when it's boring, hard, uncertain, or painful. Wealth is not an emotional experience. It is the consequence of long-term effort, consistently applied against the pull of immediate gratification. They told you to pursue happiness. What they should have told you is to pursue meaning. Because happiness is fleeting, often a byproduct of chemicals, but meaning is earned. Meaning requires struggle. It demands that you confront your limitations, face your fear, and step into uncomfortable territories. The path to financial and personal sovereignty is carved through suffering, voluntary suffering, the kind you choose, the kind you endure, because there's something on the other side of it worth building. But they never taught you that. They told you that stress is bad, that pressure should be avoided, that risk is dangerous. They said to find balance, as if balance is a virtue. No, sometimes imbalance is necessary. Sometimes obsession is required. Sometimes you need to be consumed by a vision so powerful it burns away every distraction, every excuse, every escape route. But if you've been conditioned to prioritize comfort, you'll never even get close to that fire. You'll never build the muscle, the mental calluses, or the internal architecture required to hold the weight of success, because wealth has weight. It carries responsibility. It demands discipline. It requires you to say no to things you want now in exchange for what you need later. But if you're addicted to comfort, every resistance feels like oppression. Every inconvenience becomes a reason to quit. Every setback becomes proof that it's not meant to be. And so you retreat, back to the same routine. Back to the same paycheck. Back to the same distractions that anesthetize your dissatisfaction. They knew this. That's why they engineered a world where your comforts are always available. Click a button, get food. Open an app, get validation. Press play, get entertainment. Swipe a card, get gratification. But all this convenience has a cost. It deteriorates your will. It softens your edge. It steals your urgency. It erodes your capacity to pursue anything that requires sustained tension. And when you lose that capacity, you forfeit your potential. Now let's go further to something even more hidden. They never taught you how wealth is actually created. Not made, created. You were taught how to earn, how to trade your time for wages, how to follow procedures, how to operate inside someone else's system. But you were never taught how to think like a creator, like a builder, like a producer of value. Because if you think like a builder, you won't just work for money. You'll make money work for you. They didn't want that. So they gave you consumption habits. They built entire industries around your inability to delay gratification. They showed you how to buy things, not how to build things. They gave you access to products, not blueprints. They taught you how to look rich, not how to become rich. They made sure you'd spend money on symbols of success, while never acquiring the skills to actually generate success from the ground up. And it's all rooted in your thinking. Most people are poor not because of external limitations, but because they never learned to think in terms of value creation. They were trained to see money as the reward for obedience, not for innovation. They were trained to follow instructions, not solve problems. But here's the truth. Every dollar you will ever earn ethically is a direct reflection of how much value you bring to the market. That's the formula. It's not glamorous. It's not emotional. It's math. Solve more problems, earn more money. But solving problems requires you to be useful. Not just talented, useful. There are plenty of talented people who are broke because they refuse to serve. They want recognition without utility. They want wealth without work. They want to be noticed, not needed, but wealth follows usefulness. It flows to those who take responsibility for challenges that others avoid. It accumulates in the hands of those who create systems, products, or experiences that relieve pain, save time, or generate results for others. And if you were taught that wealth is evil or selfish, you'll never pursue it with the full intensity required. You'll subconsciously sabotage yourself You'll underprice your services, you'll resist learning sales, you'll shrink when it's time to scale, because at the core you'll feel unworthy of abundance. That's not a technical problem, it's a spiritual one. And that's why you must interrogate your beliefs about money, about value, about success. Because if you don't upgrade those beliefs, you will forever live beneath your potential, no matter how hard you work. They want you to be a worker, not a thinker, because thinkers become creators, and creators become owners, and owners change the rules. Workers follow them. You were taught to look for a job, not to invent one. Taught to study for tests, not to solve real-world problems. Taught to memorize facts, not to question frameworks. But the moment you begin to think in terms of leverage, of scale, of systems, of service, you become dangerous to the old narrative. You become a threat to the machine that thrives on your compliance. And here's the final cut. They gave you goals, but no models. You were told to dream big, but never shown how value actually moves through the world. You were told to follow your passion, but never trained to identify market needs. You were told to go to school, get a degree, and you'd be safe. But safety is the opposite of freedom, and freedom requires you to produce something that others depend on. Not because you're chasing clout, but because you've taken ownership of your capacity to serve. Everything in this world runs on value, from the food on your plate to the phone in your pocket to the roof over your head. None of it appears from thin air. It's all created by people who chose to solve problems. And if you're not one of them, you will forever depend on those who are. That dependence is what they want, because it keeps you predictable, contained, distracted, easily influenced. But the moment you begin to shift from consumer to producer, the entire dynamic changes. You stop waiting, you stop complaining, you stop envying, you begin to build, you begin to rise. And rise unapologetically. There's another layer to this web, one even more deceptive, more corrosive, and more difficult to recognize because it parades around as virtue. The belief that sacrifice is optional, that you can have what you want without giving anything up, that you can somehow escape the brutal law of exchange. But this, too, is a lie, a polished, comfortable, and seductive lie. You don't get wealth without sacrifice. You don't build freedom without giving up what is enslaving you, and you certainly don't rise while clinging to the very patterns that keep you grounded in failure. This is what they never told you. If you want to ascend, something has to die. Not in the physical sense, but in the sense of identity. Your laziness must die, your fear must die, your ego must die. The version of you that is addicted to distraction, to validation, to mediocrity, to comfort, that version must be laid to rest. And no one can do that for you. No coach, no mentor, no friend, no system. Only you can put that version in the grave. Only you can choose to become disciplined enough to replace that identity with one worthy of the life you want. And it is always a choice. You are not drifting. You are deciding. Every single day, you are voting with your actions. You are reinforcing habits, values, and standards that either align you with wealth or keep you trapped in scarcity. And if your daily decisions reflect convenience, escapism, and emotional weakness, then your outcomes will mirror that. There is no mystery. There is no secret algorithm. There is only what you're willing to give up and what you're not. You want to know why you're still broke. It's not because you lack time. Everyone has time. It's because your time is hijacked by addictions you defend. You defend your Netflix binges, your social scrolling, your gossip sessions, your toxic relationships, your late sleep cycles, your emotional eating, your need to be entertained. But all of that is a form of sacrifice too. You're just sacrificing your future instead of your comfort. You're sacrificing your legacy instead of your distractions. You are offering up your potential on the altar of momentary pleasure. And make no mistake, someone is always sacrificing. The wealthy sacrifice first. They sacrifice comfort now to build structures that reward them later. The broke sacrifice later. They give up the future to indulge in the present. The difference isn't talent. It isn't intelligence. It's what they're willing to burn. One burns ego, one burns time, one burns emotions, the other burns opportunity, purpose, and their own name. This is the principle they've hidden under slogans like work smarter, not harder. It's true in concept, but not in the way it's sold to you. Because the truth is, working smarter requires that you first work harder than everyone else. You have to build the mental and emotional capacity to outlast laziness, to delay gratification, and to act strategically when others are reacting emotionally. That's not passive. That's violent discipline. That's militant focus. That's sacrifice of the highest form. But society teaches you to avoid discomfort. They say burnout is bad, but never tell you that most people aren't burning out from overwork. They're burning out from working on the wrong things, from never seeing progress, from living in chaos. Real fatigue comes from misalignment, not ambition. The exhaustion you feel is not from the journey, it's from living a life that is beneath you and calling it enough, and that leads to the final revelation, the one they absolutely do not want you to grasp. Money is not the root of all evil. The real evil is powerlessness. A man without power is dangerous, not to others, but to himself. He is volatile, he is resentful, he is confused, he is easily manipulated. He becomes a tool in the hands of anyone with more authority than him. And the system is built to keep you there, docile, dependent, and devoid of leverage. They make it sound noble to be powerless. They dress it up in morality. Money doesn't matter. Stay humble. Just be grateful. These phrases are weaponized to condition you into silence, into compliance, into accepting a diminished life as if it were a badge of honor. But here's what they're not telling you. Power isn't about dominance over others. It's about autonomy. It's about control over your own life. And money is one of the most effective forms of autonomy ever created. Without money, your choices are limited. Without money, your time is rented out. Without money, your voice is ignored. Without money, your family suffers not because love is lacking, but because options are. Without money, your principles are often compromised, not because you're weak, but because you're trapped. And when you're trapped, you lose sovereignty. And when you lose sovereignty, you are no longer free. You are owned. That's what they wanted all along. Not for you to be broke, but for you to be breakable, to be manageable, to be emotionally reactive, constantly in survival mode, always one paycheck away from crisis. That's when you're most predictable. That's when you're easiest to control. And that's when you'll willingly trade your time, your values, and your dignity for a sense of temporary safety. Not because you want to, but because the alternative feels like death. But it isn't death, it's rebirth. It's stepping into the pain that transforms. It's choosing the path of power. Power doesn't come from slogans. It comes from structure, from order, from clarity. From knowing exactly what you want and being willing to construct yourself into someone who can bear the responsibility of having it. That means cleaning up your habits. It means ending toxic relationships. It means restructuring your entire day around the person you're becoming. It means confronting your addictions, your excuses, your rationalizations, and burning them in the fire of real action. You want to be powerful. Get your money right, not because you worship wealth, but because wealth buys you time, space, protection, and influence. You want to make an impact. Get your mind right, because people don't follow the broke, the bitter, or the blind. They follow those who have earned clarity, those who have paid the price for discipline, those who have earned the right to speak because their life itself is evidence, and that's the final betrayal. They convinced you that success is luck, that those at the top got there by chance or manipulation, but most didn't, most bled, most suffered in silence, most were ridiculed for years before being praised. Most chose pain over pleasure, mission over moods, direction over distraction. And that choice, not their circumstances, is what separated them. You are not broke because you're cursed. You are not powerless because you're doomed. You are not stuck because there's something uniquely wrong with you. You are stuck because you were trained to be, trained to accept less, trained to chase comfort, trained to fear responsibility, trained to look away from your potential because it scared others, trained to hide your ambition so you wouldn't offend the mediocre, trained to suppress your voice so you'd be easier to manage. And that training will own you until you choose to unlearn it, violently and completely. The process of unlearning is not gentle. It is a war. A war against everything you've been conditioned to believe about yourself, about money, about the world. It's waking up one day and realizing that you have been living someone else's plan for your life, and that plan never included your freedom. It included your compliance, it included your labor, it included your silence, but never your power. They never told you the truth because your ignorance kept you predictable. They hid the cost of comfort, the necessity of sacrifice, the mechanics of value creation, and the power hidden in discipline. You are not stuck by fate. You're stuck by programming. Break it. Take responsibility for your time, your habits, and your mind. Burn your excuses. Create value. Build leverage. Seek meaning, not ease. Wealth is not luck. It's alignment. It's the reward for those who suffer intentionally, who rise above mediocrity, and who refuse to die unknown. You were never meant to be average, only taught to believe you were.